Hello, everybody. We are back for our latest episode of Boardroom RevOps, where we're bringing you valuable tips from RevOps experts so you can make to the C-suite. I'm James, co-founder of Account Aim, the RevOps BI platform. Super excited to welcome Collin Rhea to the show today. He's a VP of RevOps at Aptean. Collin, great to have you.
Thanks for having me on, James.
Of course. Collin started his career in BI and analytics, so he's instantly my kind of guy. But today we're going to chat a little bit, Jason. We're going to chat all things AI, kind of getting your tech stack ready for that, building a go-to-market AI vision that you can get your board on the same page as you with. But before we dive in, Collin, why don't you share your background for folks in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, like many I've talked to in the RevOps space, I kind of meandered my way in here. It is certainly not where I started my career path. I actually started with a finance degree, came out of school and did investment banking for 2 years and realized that wasn't really the lifestyle I was looking for. And I'd always been interested in the tech role. Managed to find my way into a tech kind of scale up, private equity backed scale up company through a corporate development team. Did that for a couple of years through kind of M&A and analytics around the acquisitions and how do we integrate them. Then I shifted into BI and analytics as part of integrating that whole operating system into a single data model. Did some BI replatforming, then eventually moved my way into sales ops by helping with unit economics and into some of the like more sales math side of the equation. But when our previous head of sales ops left, our CRO asked me if I would step into the seat and help take that on. So that's how I meandered into sales ops and now I guess revenue ops a little bit more broadly as the scope has expanded.
Yeah. Plus one on seeing what investment banking is like and not wanting to continue my career in there. So I'm with you on that front. Kind of what strikes me about your background as well is that you kind of did like the RevOps learning in reverse as compared to most people. Like you came in, like you built the financial acumen first, kind of like the strategic side from M&A perspective, and then I assume you kind of got into like the systems aspect side of things, which is usually kind of flipped. Like, how'd you get up to speed on the systems side of things?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I imagine it's the same way that somebody who's on systems gets up to speed on finance. You learn as you go. Um, And I guess it also starts with one system. Like you don't have to be the master of every system. So some of the early tools that I would have rolled out back in the day would have been early instances of Gong, which I've rolled out 3 or 4 different times. Insight Squared way back in the day. Um, so I mean, starting small, I think Insight Squared is a good example of something where someone with a lot of financial acumen,
Mm.
it's a playground. It's kind of like a little BI tool. So that was really easy for me to pick up. Whereas something more complicated, like understanding your CRM's data model. That took a little bit more time to develop that knowledge base.
Yeah, makes total sense. Let's jump in then to like tech stack more broadly. Speaking of systems, like I think you did a really good job. We were talking about it at Aptean of just like evaluating the existing tech stack, and it's all the more important in this world where every time you go on LinkedIn, at least I feel like I'm behind on the AI front of the latest and greatest. So maybe starting at that with like the AI goal in mind, like why is kind of evaluating the existing stack like an important exercise to do?
Yeah. So about a year ago, we finally collapsed our siloed operational org. So instead of marketing ops, sales ops, enablement, et cetera, we collapsed into a revenue ops function. And so for a part of that, I was responsible for the revenue tech stack before now being in charge of just the whole revenue ops function. And part of that was we've had, since we were siloed, accumulated a pretty large tech stack. I mean, the map that we started from was like 40-ish vendors. Some of them were small in the grand spend scheme, but some of them were pretty big. I mean, we're a pretty sizable company. We got over 4,000 employees. We're closely, and not closely, getting close to a billion in ARR. So with that comes a lot of costs, a lot of tools, a lot of point solutions of people that are kind of buying in a silo or buying for this one specific use case.
Mhm.
And before AI even, this is just like a general SaaS tool acquisition. We kind of acquired our way into a lot of overlapping areas. And as some of these vendors add AI development, you're starting to see a lot of these tools create more overlap.
Mm.
So we pretty quickly realized we actually had a lot of overlap and a lot of potential cost synergies by consolidating some of these tools. As far back as 2 years ago, we started doing some sales tech replatforming and consolidation. But when we went through this exercise, we kind of thought we might have a lot on the marketing side where
Mm.
we hadn't really done an eval like that. And it turns out we did have maybe not like a huge amount, but certainly kind of 10 to 20% of our costs. There was potential for us to consolidate away. So that was really good. But like, why go through this? It wasn't to save money, although that was certainly hopeful outcome. It was just to understand what the heck's going on. I mean, with 40 tools, the slide that we started from, like, it did not make sense to me. And I was a system admin. I was looking at these, like, how do these connect? I don't understand what these do. You're saying we have 6 different like BI-ish like data platforms? Like, why? Why do we have 4 tools that do reverse IP matching? Well, we only use one of them. So I think like the why is just literally understanding how it works. There's, I mean, whether or not we want to admit it, there's a lot of leakage in our revenue funnels. And it's really hard to notice that or figure out where it comes from unless you actually start to lift up the stones and look for what's underneath them.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. Like, what's the process then? Like, it sounds pretty overwhelming. Like, how did you tackle this eval? Obviously, there's the what the heck is going on, and I imagine you did some sort of like process mapping. But then, as you think about what do we do next, where did you go? And maybe even talk me through the process mapping, assuming that's what you did. I'm not certain.
Yeah. So we kind of did 2 assessments in parallel. So one is the process. So literally just step by step through the buyer journey. What happens at each step? Like, how are you getting to our website? How are you engaging with our website? Which tools are happening at which steps of that journey? What is the desired like start and end of each phase of the journey? So we broke our process down into, there were kind of like 5 stages of the journey, let's call it. So we don't know who you are. You're just anonymous traffic getting to our website, till we know who you are, till we got a meeting with you, till we create an opportunity with you, till we booked a deal with you, and we're working on expansion. So with those as kind of like our checkpoints of the journey, or our milestones of the journey, we tried to map from the start of that to the end of that. Well, what happened? Some of that we might have 5 or 10 tools and a couple of steps along the way. There are other phases of that journey where we have like 20 steps, which is super inefficient to get from like, I know your email to I'm sending you an email. It shouldn't take 15 steps. That should take a couple of steps. And ideally, you should be able to do that across 1 or 2 tools instead of 15 tools. So that's kind of like the process mapping. And I'll be honest, like, that side took a lot longer because nobody had the full end-to-end revenue funnel in their head. It was
Mm.
talking to a bunch of different stakeholder teams and getting them to explain, like, well, how do you use this? Why do you use A instead of B when they both do the solution? Why do we go buy this point solution that does this one thing when your other vendor that you say you like also does that? And so it was really, it is almost like interviewing internally as kind of like an internal consultant to understand why people had built the stack the way they had, or why they had purchased their way into it. Some of them were like intentional recent purchases, but some of them were just legacy. Like, we have had this vendor for 3 years and we just keep using it for that, even though now let's say like reverse IP matching, like, we've been doing this vendor forever, but now maybe we could consider using 6 Sensor Qualified, which we're using for other things, and platform
Mm.
consolidating. And people aren't thinking of it that way often, because it's person A bought this tool, person B bought another platform, and they're not really talking about platform consolidation.
And people always think about like addition too, and I'm subjected to that as well. It's like it's how like the human brain works. Like no one ever really thinks about like subtraction, especially when they're busy with a million other things too. So I think it takes that consultant type view actually to like get the bigger picture in hand.
Yeah. And I certainly got to go in and do the like trying to look like a fool being a beginner. I didn't have to be an expert, which maybe helped. I could pretend I don't know what these tools are. I could pretend I don't know how they might interconnect. I've never done marketing before. But I'd say like that just partnered with, I mean, this won't surprise anyone, just using any of the LLMs to help you understand what the heck are these tools and how they fit together and how should they fit together. I mean, I spent hours talking to ChatGPT and Gemini, just saying like, here are the tools in our tech stack. Where is there likely overlap? What kind of questions should I ask? So
That's
it
great.
it really allowed me to sound like more of an expert than I was, and to pretty quickly give some very like direct questions and feedback.
Yeah. Okay. So you've done the process mapping, which is largely tied to the customer journey, the steps and stages of things that need to happen. I think that was really well articulated. It sounds like you then also were able to see like overlap in systems and what was being used versus wasn't being used. And then I think you had some sort of like assessment as well, basically, where it was like cost versus our satisfaction. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. So in the same way that we went through this process map where a single vendor might show up in 6 or 7 places along that journey, we then tried to say just stack rank, like what are our most expensive tools? Because that's where either we should make a decision to invest or de-invest. Ultimately, that's where the highest leverage is. And we just simply did a green, yellow, red assessment. And basically what we're looking for is this tool a best in class solution or a best practice? Like, are we doing the right things here? Did we pick a solid vendor? Did we pick a no name? Second one would be like, how good is our implementation? Have we implemented it fully, or did we buy this big platform and only implement a small portion of it? And I'd say like that one was surprisingly common for us. I found quite a few examples where we had bought a decent best in class platform, but we'd only really implemented a part of it, or we never created the downstream workflow that caught the signal and triggered an action. We just kind
Mm,
of did it for this other thing. So uh, that is probably one of the higher leverage opportunities for a lot of people out there is just trying to figure out where you're already spending money and not fully leveraging the platform you're already paying for. Especially again, as all of these vendors are building and building and building, they're building features you may not realize they have
yeah.
that solves for a problem that you no longer have to go pay for because you already have it. So again, like qualified would be a good example here of we were already using it for the chat side of our platform, but we were not using it for the reverse IP matching. Should we consider that? So that's kind of like what I would say a yellow often was for us, which is like it's a good solution, but maybe we haven't implemented it full. Or the third category is just like, is it ready for the future? Is it ready for an AI native workflow? Or is it ready
Mm,
for like dynamic personalization? And that's another category where we still kind of like a lot of them newer investments that are more AI native startups. Those tend to be really flexible, but maybe they're not best in class or well known yet. But those are kind of like the I'm betting on your future and your growth versus some of the old legacy best in class vendors are maybe not as ready for that dynamic personalization future. So
yeah, that's great. I feel like, yeah, knowing the business goals and like what's coming up is so important as like contextual overlay on all of this too, because it changes how you would score, obviously. You mentioned like getting ready for AI native go to market, AI native RevOps, and all of these tools. I want to get to that very shortly, but my last question on just like the evaluation of the existing tech stack is like you've done the assessment, it's great. You have good insights. What are like the actions that should be driven from this? Like obviously there's the let's divest in some, but like tell me more. Like what other actions are folks thinking of? How did you get folks on board of like these are the things that we should now do?
yeah, so in categories where we had very clear overlap of technology, that's a really quick and easy way for us to save money. And frankly, we're sometimes we're saving money just for the good of the business. Sometimes we're taking that cost savings to fund another purchase. So in some of our examples, we've been able to kind of decrease at a renewal and use that to fund the purchase of a competitor or of a third data provider or this other little widget that solved part of the thing I used to use and it's only a third of the cost. Um, so some of it, like some of the really quick actions you can do are either consolidations or takeouts or renewals that you're decreasing. I think that perhaps the more important part of this assessment is not the short term decisions, but the
Mm,
long term architecture decisions. If you, let's say you love your CRM and you think your CRM is heading down this path towards dynamic personalization, and like that's a great signal that you should continue to invest in it more and more, or your marketing automation platform. The tools that ended up in our like solid green, solid invest category, not surprisingly, are smaller companies that are newer to us that we are seeing a lot of really quick ROI from. So, I mean,
mm.
these vendors are not going to be shocking names like Clay, names like Momentum has been a big one for us. We use Optimizely on our website. Qualified AI chat, again, I mentioned that one earlier. Like we're seeing pretty quick wins pretty easily there versus some of those bigger cost investments that we've built our stack around. maybe we don't want to build as much into those because we're already pretty stuck with them.
Yeah,
So maybe try to avoid getting ourselves even deeper and deeper stuck there, and invest in some of these startups that are seemingly growing faster in terms of their product development.
yeah,
So I think that like the long term invest in deprioritize is probably like the more valuable. But we only had one or two vendors that we quickly tried to walk away from. Most of it has been about like where should we build, as we build for the future, where should we focus building that
interesting.
infrastructure?
It's a good segue to developing an like AI vision for go to market, and we chatted. And I thought you did like an excellent job of this. So let's break that down and kind of shift gears here a little bit. Like, sorry, the highest level question I have for you is like, how can someone or you determine where like AI can be kind of most impactful to the company from like go to market perspective? Like, what's the right way to kind of think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this might be quite different for different businesses. So, Aptean sells ERP and other vertical SaaS to like specifically to verticals around apparel manufacturing, food and beverage manufacturing, discrete manufacturing. So we often are competing against horizontal ERPs. That cycle is roughly a 6 to 12 month sales cycle. Some of our ASPs could be somewhere in the $5 to $10,000 annual, but much more commonly we're talking like 50, 100, 500K of ACV. So these are not short sales cycles. They are not low touch. They are on site, and it requires a lot of resources for us. So a lot of our motion is actually the sale motion. It is not so much.
Hmm.
There's certainly a lot of marketing tech, but we're really heavy around the kind of like the people side, and the like getting on site, doing proper discovery, engaging your buying group. If you're in a really low touch or high speed environment, that stuff's not going to matter to you as much.
Totally. Yeah.
You might be a lot more focused on like AI generated outbound, which for us, it maybe helps a little bit, but it matters a lot more that our sellers are showing up well on site and they're prepared and they're asking good questions. So, really understanding the dynamics of your go-to-market motion, I think is probably step one. Trying to build a really awesome seller environment for a like a direct-to-consumer customer company is obviously not really relevant.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
great. I mean, it comes back to like pretty much like the customer journey, like you talked about in phase one, basically, and maybe going one layer deeper to, okay, what is like the actual sales process within the customer journey or go to market process there? And then how do we layer on AI? How like, so I think that's great for identifying where should we explore AI. Then how do you get to like, okay, what the heck should we do from like an
yeah,
AI perspective?
yeah. So this one's probably like the fun side of it for the tech geek and me, which was I got to go out and like canvas the team. What do you want? If you could go buy anything, what would you do? And we started with probably like 50-ish ideas. And obviously you can't go execute on 50 ideas. It's way too broad. So we started with a 50. Then we kind of looked at where in the funnel we thought that we were not doing as well as we could. So areas
Mm,
that we were looking at were win rate. Once you got into qualified pipeline, we thought we could do better. We thought we could probably collapse our sales cycles a little bit. We think we can do better at pipeline hygiene, better prioritization, better, like a little bit better website conversion. That's not a huge focus for us, and it's certainly like something we think we can do better at. But a lot of it is really around enabling our sellers and our sales development team with like making it as easy as possible for them to really qualify accounts and to really discover that pain in communicating in that voice of the customer. So for us, that's how we got about it. But so we started with the 50 and we whittled that down to, okay, what's the 20 biggest? And then we whittled that down to what's the 10 biggest. And even 10 was still too many because as
yeah.
we looked at these, this was like figure out a new strategy around how to identify and engage your ICP, figure out AI search or GEO or AEO, whatever. Just figure out how do we like progressively personalize your experience as you go through the buying journey. Like these are huge projects that touch many, many, many teams. Frankly, most of our go-to-market team is touching one, if not three or four of what we ended up was a list of six initiatives that we like we understood if we could do this thing better, this will actually impact our funnel, either through increasing our top of funnel, what comes in to our website, or it would impact a specific conversion point in our funnel, whether that's website conversion or our sales development team converting more meetings into opportunities, or AEs converting opportunities into bookings. So
That's great.
yeah, so
Yeah, I think to summarize, I think it's really, really well put. So to how you prioritize, start in the field, get a wish list of where sellers and marketers think, if they could wave their magic wand, they would automate this process using AI. Two, line that up with like what we know as operators, the areas of business needs help basically. And then three, I think kind of implicit in what you said is like attach a metric to it that we're trying to move as well. That's like kind of core to the board and the company. Is that a fair kind of encapsulation?
it is. And I think that last bit is where we perhaps have gone farther in the way that we've approached it than a lot of people that I talk to. A lot of people have a list of here are the 5 to 10 things I'm trying to do, and it's cool, and I'm going to go buy them and I'm going to go implement them with no real sense of what the ROI outcome looks like. And I think that's where a lot of people, frankly, like did and probably should start with their AI experimentation. You don't know what these are potentially going to do. And we ran plenty of experiments that failed. I mean, we did some basic like AI calling to our customers to try and invite them to webinars. That sunk a ton of time and had zero ROI. But that was back when we didn't know any better. So like, shame on us if we didn't try.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we're starting to mature and we've seen this and we've tested it a couple of times, we are getting more mature in trying to select our bets, because I think for most revenue operators, the most precious resource is time and bandwidth.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to pursue 30 experiments, that's probably not going to result in as much ROI as picking 3 in a year and really going hard at 3, which is a
Yeah.
lot more manageable.
Yeah. How I want to move on to kind of the final topic of like communicating this and getting buy-in with the board and execs, but real quick to cap off, developing an AI vision for go-to-market. As you've whittled this down and you get into executing then, what's like the quick playbook there? I imagine it's kind of similar to how you described like evaluating the existing tech stack, but now you're actually trialing a bunch of vendors, tracking to the KPI that you listed. Am I going down the right path here? How did you think about that?
Yeah, you are. So there are 2 things that we do. So each of those 6 initiatives, we have made an assessment up front of what, like realistically, if we went and spent $50,000 to do this, or 100,000 or 200,000, depending on how big of an investment we're talking about. Realistically, how much more pipeline is that going to generate? Or if we increased our win rate by 2 percentage points, what does that mean? So everything that we looked at had a minimum payoff of 5x return. So every dollar I spent needs to generate $5 of bookings. Every 100,000 I spend needs to generate 500,000 in bookings. That was a helpful way for us to start. And frankly, that came from our CEO, who is really the one driving a lot of our AI initiatives. So it makes it really easy for me. I don't have to convince them about AI.
Yeah.
They're pushing me. So that's really good. But he was pretty explicit that he's not looking for like tiny incremental gains. He's
Incremental,
looking
yeah.
for multiple time improvement, not immediately. And we didn't commit to a 5x increase in bookings. At the end of this, what we committed to was about 16% on a kind of like prorating all of these
So
improvements,
huge
prorating
win still, yeah.
some timing of this. But each of those numbers. So let's say I'm investing $100,000 to go do X. I anticipate 500,000 or more in bookings in return for that. We know like it's either going to be more pipeline or more kind of or mid-stage funnel or more late-stage funnel, and we're actually like we're measuring that. And so how do we communicate that to the board? Because again, I didn't really need to explain it to the executive; they're on board. But how do we turn around to get them to get the board excited? Was attaching it to a North Star metric, and for us, we used customer acquisition cost or cost per dollar booked specifically. You could do an LTV CAC ratio, you could do bookings, you could pick whatever North Star you want, but it helps for us to tie everything to that metric to say, like, could I decrease it by 20% or 2% or 5% based on making an investment of, again, 10K or 50K or 100K. So that was really helpful because we could then communicate to the board if our cost per dollar booked is here today, I don't know, say 1, for easy math, if I could take that down to 0.85, or like 85% of what it once was by doing these 6 things and helping them understand each of those investment in that bridge, that frankly is something that we showed our sponsors and they're actually using internally as showing other portfolio companies as kind of like a best practice that they would like to see adopted in terms of how to approach these AI experiments with a little bit more operational rigor.
That's so awesome. Really, really well put. My last question for you to cap this off is on getting to those estimates of like improvements, whether it's cost per dollar booked or something else. Are you doing pilots and capturing like a small time window of actual impact to then extrapolate to get that? Are you doing some math with assumptions to get to that? Like, tell me how you built kind of those goals.
Yeah. So I would say the early side of this, where you're kind of building that vision, you're gonna have to do some swags here. Yeah, like you're gonna use articles you're finding online, or you're gonna hear from a peer that they got X% better, or frankly, even using AI to understand what is even possible. Like I don't know, I read everything on LinkedIn. I've got 3x better on my pipeline generation. Like, yeah, maybe if you're perfect product market fit and you have a ton of PLG motion, great. But like, we don't have that. We are a much slower moving and into a much slower market. And so it just like if everything compounded at 50% better, 15% better, 20, like that's 3x, 4x year over year growth. That's just like doesn't happen. If I could get to 15% year over year growth, that's a huge one.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's like setting a little bit more of a tempered and realistic point of view, and again, shrinking the number of bets we were making and making those a much more realistic goal. That actually resonated a lot better with our board and with
Mm,
our executive team than saying, yeah, we're going to try everything and it's going to be 200% better. That's not realistic either. So again, going back to like understanding your go-to-market fundamentals, if you're growing rapidly, if you're one of these companies that are tripling year over year because you're a great new AI startup, fantastic. Good for you. We're in very different worlds. Make a very different decision as a result.
yeah. Colin, awesome. Sadly, we're out of time, but this was really great to hear how you've gotten through this. I think it's one of the best examples I've heard of someone evaluating tech stack, thinking about their go-to-market AI vision, and actually implementing. Thanks a lot for joining me, man. This was fun.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, James.